10 years ago, The Force Awakens released into theaters, bringing the first live-action Star Wars movie to the big screen. And this is a really big, monumental occasion, because this started not only the sequel trilogy, but also the start of Star Wars movies returning back into theaters. A decade later, it's very interesting going back to this movie, because was the rest of the sequel trilogy was The Last Jedi, Rise of Skywalker. People love talking about them, how bad they are. But when it comes to The Force Awakens, that's not true. Like, no one talks bad about The Force Awakens. They're like, yeah, it's a movie that exists. But a decade ago, this was a huge thing ever. Like, this is the highest grossing Star Wars movie ever, with over $2 billion. That is crazy, and no one talks this movie anymore. But I have a soft spot for this movie. This was the first Star Wars movie I watched in theaters. But like I said, this movie is very interesting in retrospect, because looking at the behind the scenes footage, and what I mean by behind the scenes footage is actually Star Wars Coffee. I remember watching his content like in 2017 when The Last Jedi was being released, and afterwards, because like, it's really cool stuff. I don't watch him anymore, or his channel anymore, but, you know, I'm gonna use his content, nostalgia for me. But, looking at this documentary when watching, I was like, this is so interesting, because like, when this movie was being made, this movie was made for people that hate the prequels. Like, this movie is anti-prequels, and it's so interesting, because this movie like the behind the scenes, this movie is so focused on practical effects. Like, everything that you see is as real as possible, and like, even the history that Kathleen Kennedy gives in this documentary, she just forgets the prequels. Like, it's like Return of the Jedi comes out in 1983, and there's a giant gap of nothing, and then the reduction of The Force Awakens. Like, that's their version of history at that given time, and that's so interesting. But at the same time, fascinating. I'm saying the word again, fascinating, because like, it's so fascinating going back to The Force Awakens. Like, this was a time where the company just did not acknowledge the prequels. And I think that's one of the major factors why the sequel trilogy failed overall, is that they're ignoring a third of the story. Like, imagine reading a book. Then, like, when you get to the last third of the book, the first half just doesn't matter anymore. Like, just like that's like the vibe you get. That's what this is. They're completely ignoring it, and they learn their lesson, because after sequels, you have Mandalorian and the Mandoverse, all Disney Plus shows. Those shows do a better job at capturing what the prequels are trying to do. You have Ewan McGregor and Hayden Christensen returning in the Obi-Wan Kenobi show. You have Hayden Christensen returning to the Ahsoka series. Hayden Christensen himself feels more like a mascot for Star Wars now than he ever was, going to every Star Wars convention now. Like, the world of Star Wars, like Lucasfilm themselves, appreciate prequels more now than they did a decade ago, because at the time, they didn't know how big the prequels were. And when The Force Awakens came out, their mentality was, let's bring nostalgia to the original trilogy fans, like my dad, my parents. Let's cater to them, not to me who grew up with the prequels. And now it's a big mistake, but at the time they didn't know that. I'll give them that. They didn't know. And looking at the behind the scenes, it's so fascinating, so interesting. That was their mentality for this. And yes, at the time, it made $2 billion. It was very, very successful. And I do think that's still a really great movie. I personally really like it. I know people have like criticized it back then, even now. It's criticized a lot. Even though not to the same extent as the other two sequels, but still gets criticism. But personally, to me, I really like it, and that's what's important. I personally like it, and so that's all that matters. As a Star Wars movie, it kind of just exists in the lore. Like, it doesn't do anything to add anything. It's very samey with A New Hope in terms of plot elements. Not exactly the same as A New Hope, but like, you know, like, there's similarities there. But overall, you know, to end this video here, this movie is very, very big in terms of when it first came out, and I think it's funny how no one cares anymore because of The Last Jedi kind of just completely delegated everything The Force Awakens did, which sucks because I think as a movie, it's really, really good, but, you know, as time goes on, it's forgettable. But I'm ending things here. If you guys enjoy, hit the like button and subscribe. We're gonna go now, so goodbye, everyone.